The first session of the day. If you'd like to come and take your seats, it's a very important one about certification, and we have a couple of experts, I should say certification and accreditation, and we have a couple of experts who can answer questions on those subjects and talk and develop your company as halal through an accredited certification company. So please take your seats, join us in the front in the summit, and I am going to invite, Habib Ghanim to come to the stage and join us. Hope you all had a wonderful evening and a wonderful breakfast. We've got a beautiful day ahead of us of sessions, expo, free food samples, and hopefully another drawing or two. We're working on that with our vendors. All right, well, it's about 8 minutes past the hour, and I think we are going to start. So, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the second day of the 4th annual Halal Expo and Summit USA. Glad that those of you who are here in person came back this morning, and we're looking to have other folks join us. We've had people coming in from all over the place, from Miami, from New York, from Texas, quite a lot of interest also virtually from various places in the world, especially Malaysia, thanks to our partner Moderator. I do want to always thank our sponsors, who are the Halal Guys, Fairbank, Deen Halal, Islamic Relief, and Ahu Barah. We're very grateful for your support for this year. A couple of housekeeping things while we're at it. I just mentioned the poll, so please do fill out the questions if you would like to give us feedback. We would love to hear it. That's for our virtual guests. And then the mask policy in the hotel, we are following their policy. For vaccinated people, masks are optional. For people who are unvaccinated, the hotel requests that you do wear your mask. The Wi-Fi available here in the conference room is WDAM, and there is no password. Again, the server name is WDAM, and there's no password. I think that takes care of all of the housekeeping, and so what we're going to do now is run one of our sponsor videos. So sit back and enjoy the ride.
We are working for you to deliver your aid, to care for our neighbors, to help in disaster, to share, to support, to care. Thank you for working with Islamic Relief USA in America, in over 45 states, nearly 150 cities, and with over 200 partners. You have reached the lives of hundreds of thousands. Thank you for working together with us. Please continue your support at irusa.org.
So we're going to get started this morning with our first panel, and it's about certification, halal certification, and we've called it, what's the big deal? Because a lot of companies, they're not certified, they don't really know about certification, and certification is a process that is really advisable, and we have a couple of experts who are going to talk about that. Why is it advisable? Why is it important? What's it about? And why should you go to an accredited certification company to get your certification? So we have with us, I'm going to start on my far left with Peter Unger, who is the president of Iquist, the International Quality Excellence in Infrastructure Systems. And Peter has been involved with accreditation since 1978. He served as the president of Iquist since 1996. I think I have that right, or maybe.
Son of ILAC, president of A2LA.
Okay, and all right, so I think maybe my bio might be slightly out of date. But in any event, he is certainly an expert, a longtime expert with several decades of experience with respect to accreditation. He was previously also an associate manager of laboratory accreditation at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Peter served as a chair of the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation from 2010 to 2016, and he's authored a number of papers on accreditation. And of course, he's active also in the establishment of the ISO IEC standards for accreditation. and he also is the author of a book entitled Achieving Accreditation for Your Laboratory. And to my immediate left, we have Habib Ghanim, who is the Vice President of the World Halal Council, a federation of over 50 halal certification bodies all over the world. And Habib and his certification body, ISWA, are founding members of the World Halal Council, and he's also a member of the World Halal Food Council. Habib himself has an educational background in accounting from the University of the District of Columbia and project management from Phoenix University. So it's great to have you both with us. And what is the big deal about certification and accreditation?
You want me to start?
I think we can have Habib start.
Okay. The big deal is that in the past, people,
Let me ask you.
the big deal is in the past, people would just say, this is halal, and my name is Ahmad, I have a big beard, I'm a Muslim, so it's halal. That's the simple version. The big deal is that many people need verification to know whether it's halal. Like Nihad was saying yesterday, you will see the kosher symbol, but you won't see the halal. Now it's getting more and more now. Some more people are putting halal, as Marwan will tell you, but it's generic and there is no way to trace it back or to verify.
So this is really about consumer confidence in
Yes,
what is really
exactly.
halal and what's not.
Exactly. And then why it's important, the accreditation part and the certification part. In order to certify and be internationally recognized, you must be accredited with the international standards, which the GAC, the Gulf Accreditation Council, the HAC, the CIMIC, they're international standards that you have to abide by in order to be recognized that if you have that logo, it will be used anywhere in the world, not only in your community. So that's the big deal. Many people are now realizing that if they do not have it, they have a problem. And people ask, who certified you? I think in our company here, we have one of the oldest certifiers, ISA team there, you know, and Ifanka and others. We had only 4 or 5 in the US that are accredited and recognized, you know. Now, I want to bring the difference between accreditation and certification. They're similar but different. The one is on a bigger level, you know, where basically the halal process is getting the raw materials and making sure they're not mixed with non-halal products, and then training the employees to do the proper job, you know, which requires training from accredited bodies. And because of the demographics of all what's going on, I don't want to go into definition of what is halal and haram. That's halal 101. But basically, many people in the past think that anything that is not doesn't have pork or alcohol is halal. But there's a lot more to that because they're parts of animal meat, bone, and so many other ingredients. I have the list of the ingredients which I can share, but I don't want to take too much time because I know we have less than half an hour. Blood is also forbidden. Documentations for halal accreditation are information on the raw materials, the metrics of the raw materials, the brand name, the raw material ingredients, class certificate of the raw materials. For example, you have MUI, Majlis Ulama of Indonesia, you have MUIS in Singapore, you have JAKIM in Malaysia, and I don't see the Malaysian group here, but Mihas is doing a good job. Oh, you're here. Assalamu alaikum. Salam alaikum. And they were one of the pioneers. They started, But many people do not understand the difference between accreditation and certification. JACIM is not an accreditation body. They just have a list of people that they recognize to bring things in their country, and they appoint people, really. They are not, you don't have to meet certain qualifications because they do not come and audit you like JAC or ISO. So same thing with Indonesia and Malay and Singapore. But we have to give them credit for what they have been doing. So I'm going to summarize basically the technology part, the international customers and traceability. I will stop and pass it on to Peter, who will. The serious issue here is halal is very serious, and accreditation is a must if you want to verify. What I mean, accreditation of the halal certification body, and the halal certification body would do their due diligence, going to report to the plants to make sure that there is compliance. Not only my name is Ahmed, is halal. So there are many things I want to talk about. If there is questions and answers, I'm better at that. But I don't want to go into the detail. I'll let Peter talk about accreditation because he, honestly, they help us with A2LA. There is an accreditation body. When we started, I started around 20 years ago with Malaysia and Indonesia. We started in Jakarta. So I can tell you that it was not an easy journey. We came from the bottom to the top, and we have all our staff trained. We have Australia auditors and technical auditors. That my daughter just did a course with Dubai. I have a diploma in halal. It costs 20,000, so it's not cheap.
Right.
So that's all I would say. You must be accredited. The certification body, and you cannot just go to a fly-by-night place and just get a certificate from Marwan Ahmed and Is Halal.
Let's bring in Peter here to talk about accreditation because it is different. What happens is it's a certification body gets accredited by some kind of accreditation entity, basically to assure that its accreditation, its certification process meets the standards. So tell us more about that, Peter.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and salam alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, I think, for some of you around the world. Your question is a good one. I've been involved for several years in setting up a global system for mutual recognition of accreditation so that certification bodies do not need to get multiple accreditations from every country in the world, that they are certifying product that is exported to those countries. The accreditation, that's distinct difference is it's a recognition of competence. Competence to perform specific certification services for specific products against specific standards. And the first step in all of this is making sure that the companies understand the standards for which they have to make halal product. And the certification body is in effect merely conforming or formally
adhering to?
Well, it's not actually a guarantee.
No,
it's an attestation. It's a formal attestation that the company's product meets the standards, and the certification body allows its certification mark to be placed on the packaging or appropriate part of the product.
So it's an additional measure to give consumers the confidence that...
Yes, we're trying to provide assurance that the product is actually halal. And we want to make sure the certification bodies are competent in meeting the international standards for
ISO.
certification bodies, largely ISO, International Organization for Standardization, with some additional elements that have been placed by GSO and CIMIC and Malaysia and other on top of the ISO standards. The good news there is the ISO standards are largely being used by CIMIC in particular. One of the things I wanted to focus on in my talk today was to point out what CIMIC has done very recently. They published a halal quality management system requirements document that is, I think, CIMIC number 18, and they have used the ISO 9001 high-level structure, most all of the text, but have added halal characteristics to it. And they have 172 references of halal in their standard. They have not compromised the actual baseline 9001 requirements. 9001, by the way, is ISO's #1 selling standard, because theoretically it applies to any organization. And what they've done uniquely in the what CIMIC has done, which I really like, and I want to make sure that it's not only maintained a high-level structure, but has added halal quality management system principles that start with loyalty to Islamic values. They also have an Annex B that they've added that provides examples of Islamic values, which I'll talk about shortly. Then it lists honesty, transparency, acts of good morals, conformity of partner demands to the Islamic rules, respect for human rights in conformity with the Islamic rules, customer-oriented approach in conformity with Islamic rules, loyalty of the personnel to the Islamic rules and their respect for human rights, halal commitment, communication management to ensure the above principles are actually employed in the management system. Those are the halal additions to 9001. But the next 7 principles they listed are the same as ISO 9001. That is, interested parties focus, leadership, and engagement of people, risk-based process approach, improvement, evidence-based decision-making based on consultation, and relationship management. The CIMIC Halal Quality Management System Standard also requires a halal compliance executive who is to be a Muslim, and a halal advisor or an advisory board is also required. One clause I found of particular interest under the infrastructure requirements section reads as follows: the organization shall respect effective opportunity and equal treatment, regardless of race, sex, maternity, paternity, religion, political opinion, personal relationships, national origin, social roots, health and age, physical disabilities, and other personal characteristics. It shall not get involved in any kind of discrimination directly or indirectly, and shall not infringe the human rights of relevant parties. There are also rules with regard to the organization needs to provide the infrastructure necessary for the operation of its processes to achieve the conformity of products and services to Islamic values, which I've just included.
So this sounds revolutionary, actually.
Absolutely. My basic point here, which I wanted to make clear, is to me, those are universal values. They're not just halal values. And I would hope that 9001 would seriously look at what CIMIC has done in adding these values and considering adding these values to the next revision of 9001. I don't know whether that's actually taking place. I'm not part of the working group of the 9001. But
Well,
clearly,
perhaps you can ask the General Secretary of CIMIC in the next panel.
well, I would hope that CIMIC would make the case for what they have done to create the halal quality management system standards, have elements that are equally applicable, again, universally. I think the ethics, the values that are spelled out are indeed appropriate to be put in. And of course, there might be a lot of pushback on that because I think some organizations might not be able to be certified if they demonstrate a dishonesty in the marketplace. I mean, that's one critical issue that we all worry about is organizations themselves can be dishonest and represent their product as halal when it isn't halal. And this is what certification accreditation is all about. We're trying to increase the assurance that products are indeed halal as they're represented in the marketplace. And it's clear that self-declaration of conformity by an organization is not gonna make it.
Exactly.
That's why certification is so important, and of course, making sure that the certifier is competent to do the certification for the types of products that they certify.
So I said yesterday, and I've been saying for the last few months actually, that really the principles associated with halal, with tayyib, are the corporate social responsibility of Muslims and of Muslim companies.
The Annex B that I mentioned earlier that provides actual examples of halal Islamic values under the heading of piety is trustworthiness, justice, sincerity, honesty, gratefulness, and courage. Under the moral heading is caring, cooperation, courtesy, humility, tolerance, and respect. And under the heading for quality is learning, discipline, commitment, innovativeness, efficiency, and effectiveness. The standard notes the importance of these values to be incorporated in the halal quality management system and its culture. And to me, as I said, these are not just halal values, they're universal values. And hopefully the ISO 9001 folks would to look at this and say, you know, these are good ideas to put in the standard. I just want to mention CIMIC is all. Go ahead.
Really, we're talking about best business practices. We're talking about how you treat your employees, how you ultimately will affect your bottom line is impacted by all of these things, and plus consumer confidence. And the more, and I would also say as a matter of marketing, if your brand sticks to these principles, if you've got a brand like, for example, Halal Guys, that has an enormous measure, a high level of trust, all of these things are going to contribute to the betterment of your bottom line. So this is good for business.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to also point out the CIMIC has also published standards for accreditation bodies and certification bodies that are very similar in content to the ISO standards and GSO standards on the same topics. They've also published very recently, and last year, 2020, supply chain management system requirements for transportation and for warehousing. Malaysia has published virtually identical, the same standards, which is a good thing. They're working together so that we're not differing with regard to the same subjects. Unfortunately, that may not be true of a lot of other national standards. and I understand the frustration of you folks that have to abide by all these standards, all these country standards, and keep track of them all and make sure you get the latest revisions. The certification bodies have to do the job. So, and then of course, another complicating factor may be the requirements that the accreditation bodies impose on the certification bodies end up flowing down to the organizations that are getting their products.
Yeah, I would like to.
Let me, before you do that,
Yeah.
Habib, let me just remind the folks who are virtual, you can see we have the chat up on our screen. If you have questions for our experts, these are complicated subjects, and these changes that are being proposed are revolutionary in the halal space and very aligned with the CSR, the corporate social responsibility that many companies across the globe, not just in the halal space, are looking at to not only make their businesses more effective, but to make them more ethical, more sustainable, more in conjunction with the UN sustainability guidelines. And this is absolutely revolutionary to hear this. So please send us your questions in the chat if you have them. Go ahead, Habib.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the importance of halal accreditation, as Peter said. It can be expensive and cumbersome and bothersome, but if we, the certification bodies, do not meet that standard, we cannot also apply it to the clients. And I'll give you a typical example. Jakim is one of the oldest, not accreditation, they don't do accreditation, we do certification. But just last year, for the first time in almost 25 years, they had to apply and get certification for ISO 17065, which we had way before them. You know, I'm just giving an example. They couldn't bypass the accreditation part, although they were doing it only for their country. So there are many things that I would like to bring into the picture for the certification part, but I would like to let Peter finish on the accreditation.
I don't know, a couple other things. Malaysia's standards body has published in 2019 food safety according to hazard analysis critical control point, commonly known as HACCP. And the standard refers to Malaysia's food hygiene regulations that were established in 2009, requires food premises to have a food safety assurance program. And this standard can be used as one of the programs required by the regulations. The HACCP system, though, is not a standalone system. For HACCP to be effective, the standard requires management commitment, things like quality management requirements, and a solid foundation of prerequisite programs such as good manufacturing practices, good hygiene practices, and other relevant codes of practice, food hygiene, etc. The innovative part of this Malaysian HACCP standard is that it provides detailed guidance on designing a HACCP system, including the forms that can be used. So it's very educational. For those that don't understand HACCP, this standard is really a great guideline for using, and I think it's unprecedented. I don't know of any other country that's developed the way the Malaysian has done it. A lot of these requirements out of CIMIC in Malaysia have actually built upon the GSO standards, which have been around for a long time, 2015 and so forth. And just a couple other points. I think Singapore's food safety guidelines have, I think, the most easily understood requirements related to halal beverages, plants, and animals. They've compiled the various religious rulings from various Islamic schools of thought to provide this list of what's halal versus haram. It's very specific and detailed, and Egypt has provided a similar standard with a very detailed list of halal versus non-halal food products and halal materials for packaging, as well as how one goes about determining conformity with the requirements. So those two standards are very good to to follow as an organization that wants to provide halal product to the marketplace. So.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I think you just touched the tip of the iceberg, and in which we try to educate people why you need to get an accredited halal certification body. It is not trying to push anybody out of the market. It's to make sure that the consumer, if they see that it's certified by an accredited body or an experienced old halal certification body like the ISA, for example, or IFACA, that the product is really halal. I want to educate a few of us, which I learned in my 25 years in the halal certification, and we came up with. By the way, when Peter said Islamic affairs, we call it Sharia, but GSO tries to compromise. They don't want to scare people in America by using the word Sharia, but when they say Islamic affairs, it means Sharia. We have Sharia auditors and technical auditors. This is something I learned through the years, and I would like to share with you the halal protein product digestion time periods. Some people have been complaining about what the animals eat is not halal. So we have a team of experts and Sharia experts that came up with this after consulting all the schools of thought. If the fish have been eating, like in the ponds, bad food and everything, you know what I mean, pigs, everything, they dump it in there. You can separate them, the fish with scales, and in one day, what they have been digesting will come out and they will just eat the good stuff. For poultry, it's 3 days. And for sheep, it's 5 days. For cows, it's 7 days. And for camel, it's 40 days. What I mean by that is, if they've been eating something that is not halal, if you separate them for that number of days, then they become pure halal, of course, based on the slaughter. I do not want to get into the hand slaughter versus the mechanical slaughter. It was Malaysia who started mechanical slaughter here 20 years ago. I was with the team allowing stunning and mechanical slaughter. So many people do not understand, and I've told Marwan this many times, the difference between zabiha, halal, and just. Zabiha is an Arabic word that means properly slaughtered. It doesn't mean hand. If you go to Southeast Asia, they tell you that it's by hand. That's, I don't want to use the other word that Tim doesn't like. But Zabiha purely means properly cut, whether it's by machine or with a knife. And the halal aspect is the tasmiyah being said during the slaughter, which is Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. That's basic. I don't want to go into the details. There is some stunning issues there when you, for example, the poultry, if you stun them, it's just for them not to shake. You can still put them down on the ground and they will still walk after a few. People have this idea that you are electrocuting them. It is not true. Most of the chicken that you are eating here and everywhere else, whether it's in a halal restaurant, is mechanical slaughtered and stunned. Don't believe that it's hand slaughter and they charge you more. You go to most of the halal stores, local Muslim halal stores, they sell you, it says Zabiya halal. They are right, it's properly cut. But they charge you more because they're telling you it's done by hand, and it is not true, unfortunately.
So let me, we're getting a little far afield from certification
It
right now.
It is part of the certification.
Yes, right. But
the word
it's also schools of
Zabiya
thought.
halal that they put doesn't mean that it's hand cut. Many people
Gotcha.
believe that.
And our next panel, actually, you can raise these with the speakers on the next panel, because it's about standards and labeling and why we don't have uniform standards. So, but I wanna kind of keep it on certification, because what does it take to, well, first of all, how does a company know who to go to get certified for its product? And then how long does the process take? What does that involve for companies?
It's about average 30 to 40 days. The process starts with you doing the application and paying $100 just to fill out the application. And when you send out all the documents, like we, the certification body, would do to the accreditation body, we have all these documents that we have to prove that we have a company that is legit, and we have the technical experts, we have people in the plants and all of that. It's a long process, but I mean, it's expensive for international accreditation.
How long is long?
Well, it depends on how quickly your staff can provide the documents to the accreditation body and how long the plant, the products, the people doing the products in the plant can provide the documents to the certification body. So I would say average 40 days, and locally, for us, it takes about 30 to 40 days. For the accreditation body, I think 3 months because they have to plan and come. Thank God for remote access nowadays. All of these documentations can be sent, they do not have to come in person, like in the old days. And when they come in the old days, the problem we had, that's why it was, many people are eliminated. They want to charge you a business class ticket, 5-star hotel, per diem, 500 a day. I think I will leave that part to Quentin later on to bring up. I can see him smiling with his mask because we've had this problem for many, many years. That's why people are asking, why are you charging for certification? Because we have to train our people. I just told you my daughter had a diploma from the University of Dubai. It costs almost 18,000. So what are we going to do? We have to pass the cost on.
Right.
So it is basically, it's about 2-3 months, I would say,
okay,
for accreditation. For certification, about 40 days or 1 month.
Okay.
To
Peter,
answer your question,
thoughts?
am I right, Tim? Yeah.
With a few other factors.
One of the, to answer the first part of your question, the International Halal Accreditation Forum has recognized a number of accreditation bodies around the world, and that would be a good place to start with regard to searching for a recognized accreditation body. And then you can look at the certification bodies that have been accredited by these bodies.
I see. So you're sort of going from
So-
top down.
Well,
We
yes,
have a list.
but you can understand whether or not some of these accreditation bodies will not operate internationally.
Mhm.
All right, they will only do their own country.
Pakistan, for example.
Yeah. So that's of course a challenge perhaps for the certification bodies that want to get their certified product into those countries. But nevertheless, the certification bodies that I've dealt with went to the GSO accreditation bodies, basically, the country UAE and JAC. Because they've been in the business the longest, basically, in doing this. But there are others that have been qualified around the world. A couple in Europe. We have a couple in North America.
A2LA.
Well, yeah, but there's a couple others too.
Yeah.
So it's not just A2LA. So then there's only a couple in South America. I think actually 1 or 2. In Asia, there's I think Singapore.
No, Singapore is Moses Olonga of Singapore.
But there's others that
Recognition.
are not. There's a lot of other accreditation bodies in the world that are not offering halal certification accreditation.
Mhm.
So the ones that I have, I think there's at least about 20 on that website. That would be the first place to go to see what accreditation bodies are recognized. And then the certification bodies can make a judgment about what's the best approach. I'm not recommending anybody, but that you might have a need for a particular part of the world, and you want to maybe go to the accreditation body to understand best that part of the world.
I see. So it's definitely, well, it's kind of a no-brainer for food companies that are selling halal food products to be certified. What other, should technology be certified halal? Should other things, should hotels be certified halal? What?
I can answer that because I was in Japan and Hilton Hotel Okay, I see Marwan is saving time out.
Yeah, so
I'll just make it very brief. Hilton wanted to be halal certified because Muslims are going there because of halal tourism. And we went there. They have a halal friendly certificate, which they were serving food that is supposed to be halal with pork and other stuff. So it was confusing to most of the people who attended. They didn't know the difference. Some even took the other food by accident because it was written in Japanese. So I just want to end with telling people the importance of getting a halal certification that you can use not only locally but internationally. I see our halal food guys has a question. If Elizabeth would allow you, then I can answer.
Absolutely, I'll come down to you. So anybody else with questions, raise your hand, I'll come to you next.
Thank you. Well, I have a few questions, but because of the time, I'm just going to limit it to, it's a good point you raise as far as halal certification and halal bodies, as far as accredited for food products. But, when it comes to, for example, and I personally faced this in Malaysia, with our trademark, halal guys. There was a huge resistance, to let us open because the halal guy's name. And that was, to me, it was like, and we really was so patient to deal with this until we got it through. And the second, a quick one, which is, for Brother Habib, is about how expensive it is. Yes, to get it for internationals.
Thousands and thousands.
I have dealt with Jakim, and the issue you mentioned, I hear it by myself, about how expensive and the requirement they just to come here in person. And thank God this no longer exists. I hope so, as far as bringing the group into the country to do the process. But also, it really need to look into reducing the cost, because I was giving my brother an example. We have a franchisee, we have a manufacturer here. I want them to send the product to Indonesia, and I want them to be certified. So I gave them the list of the halal certified bodies here is approved by Indonesia, and the manufacturer was to be quite honest, to them was a shocking number how expensive it is to get certified.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know I've spoken with you before. One of the problems is the source of the raw materials, which is the meat or the poultry. But there are other things that require halal certification. It's not only meat. We're talking about beauty products, you have processed items, even sweets. I was talking to a sister from Afghanistan, I think, or Turkey, about Haribo sweets. Even sweets, you have to make sure that the sugar they use doesn't have pig bones. So how we solve that problem as a certification body is that apart from our Sharia people and technical auditors doing their due diligence, we are required by the accreditation bodies to send samples to an ISO 17025 approved accredited test lab. And when we get the results, the result will show that this doesn't have porcine. Now we're doing alcohol also, not only porcine. So all of that is in the process. That's why it's expensive. And I tell you, it's better now. It's in the old days, when I started, you're talking about, I spent 40 to 50,000 every trip. And right now, as I'm speaking, my office is dealing with Saudi food, Gulf food, and here they're doing Tango is cheap because it's remote now. So it's getting better, hopefully with the remote access. But once we are accredited, of course, we are accredited, it becomes cheaper down the line. But thank you very much and keep up the good job. We're really happy and proud to have halal guys.
I want to point out, I understand the challenge. You have all these retail establishments all over the world. And not everyone has to be audited. There are rules that the International Accreditation Forum has put in place that suggest a sampling plan. The certification body could sample a number of your, without looking at all of them. If the sample all conforms, then they
Exactly.
safely make the assumption that all your other halal guys, retail establishments are in compliance and therefore can be certified.
Exactly.
That's so you. The rules of the game are sampling is allowed. In other words, we don't have to look at all your facilities.
Let's let our sister here ask one more question, final question, really quick.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
You
salam.
kind of answered my question, but mine was directed towards a lot of.
I can't hear you.
Kind of answered my question, but mine is directed more towards a lot of halal meat that us consumers are buying are coming from New Zealand and Australia. So you kind of answered it, doesn't necessarily be certified, I guess, there, but doesn't necessarily have to be accredited here. I mean, a lot of meat is coming from there, especially when you get from big places like.
I can
Iquest.
answer that. I can answer that because we do what is called recertification. That is why it's important to be accredited, because the meat that is coming from New Zealand, especially the lamb, is all halal. It's done, I know them personally, it's done by an accredited certification body. So we have to take mutual recognition, like you said. But once in a while, when they use that to do for further process, we still have to test the final product. I'm not talking about the raw meat, the final product. Okay, so like Peter was telling the halal guys, they don't have to go to every single item. It's just they take random sampling. But we have to show the accreditation body that we have tested and it has passed the test. That's all. Thank you very much. I know there's a lot of questions. I have a lot to say, but you can ask me when I'm walking around, because I've been in this for over 30 years, and Brother Rafik is doing some standards too, which will help us.
I have a question.
For me?
For anybody. After this, we only need to give everybody 10 minutes to mingle around the network and talk to the exhibitors, because it looks like everybody's polarized here, which is good, but we also want to support the businesses. But the last question, and you can answer it briefly, is there is no halal standards in the US.
There is, but
And I know we're going to discuss it next session.
yeah.
But a company that's going to only sell in the US, does it need halal certification?
Yes.
Because usually you're accredited internationally, but you're not accredited.
We are accredited here.
Let me ask you.
Okay.
There is no such thing as US accreditation yet, unfortunately.
No, there
And
is.
so-
I would tell you you're wrong, but I'll correct you. Then.
Okay, very good. So what do you tell the company that wants to sell in the US only, but not outside the US?
No, it's like Peter said, it's accreditation is the first thing. As a halal certification body, right? Whether it's local or international, you just take the example of halal guys. They're doing it locally here, but somebody in Malaysia or Indonesia wants it. I have Brother Rafik, they were doing it locally with no problem, but somebody in UAE wanted it. That's why you need to have accreditation and international recognition. So you kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone. The last thing I want to say is that we, as accreditation certification bodies, like you tried, we should work together and help each other and work together and have mutual cooperation. And I give Marwan credit for trying to do that, and I thank you for that. I think that's why the American Halal Council was created, part of it. And also the last thing I'll say, World Halal Council, World Halal Food Council, MUI, LPCOM, and all of those, they're basically clubs to me. I don't call them councils, they're clubs, because they only appoint friends rather than getting people who are qualified. That's my final point, and I'll leave it at that. Assalamu alaikum.
I'd like to thank our speakers, Peter Unger and Habib Ghanim. Thank you for being with us today and giving us your benefit of your insights.